Hello, it's Anna. It's the 1st of December and today I'm going to make a wreath gathered purely from bits of material that I'm cutting from my own garden and from the gardens we grow on. We don't actually grow anything specifically for December wreaths because we're a flower garden. So I want to talk to you through how you too can cut things from your own garden that may not be traditional Christmas materials but will make a really wonderful Christmas wreath regardless. This is a very traditional holly that we often use in Christmas wreaths, but it's untraditional in the way that it's not very spiky and it's solid green. I absolutely love it. Now, as I've told you for the last couple of years, remember to cut right deep into the plant when you're taking your foliage. Right, so I'm cutting some of this dogwood, this midwinter fire. Really love it for its bright stems. It's my little sort of nod to red for Christmas. This is where we don't have to think out of the box, not very traditional. So I'm going to use some of this beech because we've got lots of it. Not necessarily with the leaves. What I like is the little buds coming off it. So I'll probably take the leaves off and we'll just end up with these little sort of flicky bits, which I think are sort of little fibre optics. And then we've got this hazel in our garden. We're going to coppice this in the spring. And these little pieces here, they're just starting to open up. These are going to be lovely in our wreath. Don't forget, if it's just a wreath for yourself, you don't even need that much. I'm probably cutting enough for a couple of wreaths. Oops. Right, and I like these cotoneaster this year. It's some really pretty colours, so I'm going to take a bit of this as well. I'll show you this privet, which is very pretty. It has little black, almost berries on it. And we've got this pussy willow that's about to pop. I'm going to take a couple of pieces of this because that'll be interesting sticking out of my wreath also. None of these plants I've used have been planted for Christmas, but I'm cutting what looks good in the garden right now that we could potentially use. Hello, right, back here in the gardens, and I'm going to make my wreath. I'm in true style. We're reusing an old wreath ring. You can see it's got a bit rusty and cobwebby. No problem, always keep your wreath ring every year. And I've also grabbed a couple of pieces of rosemary and some grasses on the way through the gardens. This wreath ring I'm going to cover in moss, which we usually do. It gives a really nice full quality, it's a bit of weight to the ring and something padded to work off, gives that really lovely thick effect. And I love seeing bits of the green. Now, moss, certainly in the UK, is a protected species, and it's the one thing, unless you take it off your own property, you need to buy it from a reputable supplier, a certified supplier that's allowed to do that. So it comes in these very ugly bags. I will keep the moss in these bags, and I just keep it pretty much anywhere, but actually a dark, cool place is the best for it. And we'll keep it for years. I'll strip it off my wreath ring and stick it in a plastic bag, and it will last for ages. Might not stay green, but it's still really lovely to use. Right, so I'm going to start off by getting my moss. I'm going to pull it out, tease it out a little, because you end up with some quite heavy lumps when you buy it like this. And I'm going to very quickly put it round my wreath ring, sort of fairly evenly as I go round. Okay, that will do. Don't worry too much about how thick it is, but you do you. Go thick, go thin, whatever feels right. Right, and then I'm going to bind it when I can find the end of the ring. Right, so I'm going to tie it off to itself, round the back of the wreath ring, onto itself, and just give it a twist. And then I'm just going to very quickly go round my wreath ring, I don't know, 6, 7 times. That's 2. Right, I'm doing more than 7 times. Oh no, bang on. 7 times round. Then I'll just show you what it looks like. I can get a couple of fingers under that wire, so it's not too tight. It's not going to fall off. You always get little sort of dangly bits coming off it because it's by its very nature, it's a natural product. And now I'm going to keep hold of my wire. I'm not going to cut it, and I'm just going to bind all my materials all the way back round again. Now, I build my wreaths quite intuitively, and as you see, I've just gone around and cut stuff that I think looks nice. It's not a very, let's say, a traditional wreath, because I'm not using all pine and holly and ivy, but I think it's going to be very beautiful nonetheless, and I want it to inspire you to look at your gardens a bit differently and cut and use what's growing around you, which will of course be different. So this is all my foliage I've bought from my garden, and then with the bits that I've gathered from here, and I'm going to start making the wreath up. So I'm going to get it all out. Sometimes I gather and chop up all my pieces quite small if I've got pieces perhaps like this with shorter pieces, but today I've managed to gather lots of much longer pieces, and I kind of want to keep that vibe of longer pieces, so I'm just going to kind of have a really good look at what I've got and consider what I'm going to use as my focal pieces. Look at these eucalyptus berries, really lovely. I probably don't think I'm going to like that in the wreath, so I'm going to cut the top parts of the branches off and just use those bottom elements. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure where this is going to go, this wreath, so I'm just going to start working it and gather a few pieces together, 2, 3, 4 bits together, and lay them on top of where I'm starting. So I'm going to go over the top sometimes it's nice to go underneath a few branches so you can sort of hide your work in. And then underneath, I'm not going to cut my wire, and then I'm going to gather a nice another little cluster of bits. And I'm also going to take my little clusters to the left and then to the right as I go round, because then it fills the whole wreath out. And you see here I've got some stems sticking out quite a long way. I'm just going to snip those off and carry on. And then if I find a nice piece that I think is going to work and I didn't get it in my last bunch, if you're sort of fairly loose, you can just push your stems in underneath and reposition. So I want to tell you about where wreaths, well, we know think wreaths come from, and that's from the Romans. And the Romans used to celebrate midwinter with their celebration called Saturnalia, and they'd celebrate by making laurel crowns or wreaths, and it represents the year going round and evergreens in that darkest point of the year. And what's interesting, the Romans used laurel because that's what they had growing. So the sort of traditional German pine or English holly and ivy is just what people had growing abundantly around them. So don't worry what it is that you use, because just making a wreath with your own foliage is going to be traditional for your place, and is extra special if it's from your own garden. But don't forget, I'm not cutting my wire. It just makes it a lot easier. Keep hold of it, because it's very easy to lose your wire when you're working like this. And it means the whole thing just holds itself together beautifully. Really love this this cotoneaster on here. Right, I've got a couple of pieces. I think it doesn't look quite as full in this position. I feel like there's a gap, so I'm going to push in a piece of panicum and rosemary into that spot, and I can just, because they're quite stiff stems, I can just stab them into the moss, and I know they will catch the other pieces, and then I've got something now in that space. I think that looks a lot better. So you don't need to have that pressure of knowing you've got to get it right as you go round. You can just add to it as you get round. Okay, this is my final bundle of pieces, and I've got to get in underneath where I started and finish off and hide this, where you can see I've bundled my last set of stems. So I have to make sure I've got nice neat ends to be able to get in underneath. Make sure my wire's ready for me. Take my wire over the top and then try and tuck it under some of these holly leaves so you don't see it. And the eucalyptus. Round the back, and then I can get right underneath here because I've got these other bits covering it up. I'm actually going to tuck that bit of rosemary in. It's a bit loose. Right, and now we can cut it. So I'm going to cut my wire, and you can either wire it into itself on the actual ring, on the wire that you've been tying around the ring or the actual ring. I usually do it over the ring because then I know it's going to hold. Whilst you're at it, you can make yourself a little loop to hang on your door. So you can see there I've made a very small little loop that I can hang. Right, now I want to have a look at it and check that it's even. Okay, and there is my finished wreath, and I can have a look at it and see if I've got any gaps and bits I want to finish off. So I'm going to hang it up and stand back and have a look at it. Okay, so it's very untraditional, but it's entirely made for my garden, and I love it.